Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Cloudcast episode 114, what we did at UK Games Expo 2022. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
I'm Rory Summers.
So, we're trying to record this as soon after the expo as possible, so it's about a week since we were actually... It is actually a week since me and Sid were there on the first full day, it's a week today, and our aging brain cells will no doubt forget something we saw, and possibly because we were massively overwhelmed by all the exciting stuff we did see. So Sid and I were there for the Thursday night preview and the full on the Friday, and everyone else was there for every single hour available, I believe. I think. What time did you guys leave on the Sunday then?
We left early on the Saturday. I think we all clocked off about 4:30, 5 o'clock. But I was there at kick-out on Sunday.
Right.
Yeah. Fishing for final games. with the kids. The kids were literally just sat on the floor eating sweets while I'm talking to publishers at 4 o'clock on Sunday.
Yeah, I bailed out about 2 o'clock on the Sunday. My feet had enough by then. But I'd seen pretty much everything I wanted to see, or I could get to see, rather.
I mean, I felt knackered just after one full day in the Thursday night preview. I mean, my body was not used to this kind of punishment.
No. Lockdown's made us soft and flabby.
Well...
No, that's true.
Yeah,
it really is.
There's enough firkins going around here in beer barrels.
Yeah, there's those six packs around here.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, last year when I went for the sort of greatly reduced one, it was still over 3 days, but it was only sort of 1 and a bit halls, and it was a greatly reduced hall, so it's very leisurely, and that was much more pleasant.
So yeah, we were all there resplendent in our Polyhedron Collider t-shirts. Well, resplendent until about lunchtime on Friday, where 2 members of this podcast managed to get Korean fried chicken sauce all down the front of it.
We're gonna actually start making Polyhedron Collider branded bibs.
I think that'd be quite useful. Yes,
for at least 2 members.
That would be extremely handy. Not that I would like to admit which members are being singled out.
I don't think we need to point fingers or name names at other members of the Polyhedron Collider crew that did it on the following days as well.
We don't need to point.
I've missed this.
We don't need to point fingers because the 2 people who have just screwed up have just admitted it themselves.
All right, stuff.
No fingers do need to be
you,
pointed.
Andy. It happened to you too, Sunshine.
I got to admit, I did see the photograph from the second day of you eating the waffles. Did the waffles?
I got a little bit of chocolate on my kilt. It didn't go on my t-shirt.
Oh, we're in semantics territory now, mate.
Hey, the t-shirts are branded. You know, the kilt's some 30 quid thing from Amazon. That could be replaced quite easily.
Oh dear. Speaking of t-shirts, I did actually get a couple of questions for people asking if they can get hold of t-shirts. It's something I'm going to look into. Because we are podcasters, of course, we're not doing much YouTube videos so people don't see a face. So we use t-shirts to kind of show who we are at conventions. So what I'm going to try and do in the future is get like different t-shirts. So listeners' t-shirts will be different to kind of those t-shirts available for us. And also our RPG group have actually suggested they want a PHC test subject t-shirt as well, which I think we'll have to get for them.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
I think it was your idea actually, Rory, was that with a number of us, 3, potentially 4, if you count Sid and a can of Dulux, are passingly interested in painting models, or at least have done in the past, because I know Rory, you used to paint for Games Workshop, did you not?
Paint for Games Workshop is a stretch. I used to work there as a sales assistant, but I did paint Games Workshop figures, yes.
Okay, so you've got previous. I know Steve has painted stuff in the past because I've seen his work. It's very good. And I have been spending the last couple of years painting quite a lot of things, which a few people may have seen on the internet. So it was Rory's bright idea, I think, that we should have a PHC painting contest. So the idea was we go to Expo and troll all the miniature stands, of which there were many, and all decide on a miniature that we would all paint. So the same miniature each of us would paint, and then we would decide in some fashion which is best. Now, we haven't really set a time limit on this, mostly because we're really disorganised and or busy. So this will probably take about 6 months. But we popped along and we found Blue Giant Miniatures, who were, I think, trading as Atlantis. Blue Giant Studios, sorry. Yes. They were trading as Atlantis Miniatures on the day, but they're forming Blue Giant Studios for reasons I'm not going to go into here. And we decided to acquire a troll shaman, which has got cloth and skin and bone and wood and basically all the elements that make painting a miniature difficult.
It is. I was about to show it to the camera and then realised I've got it turned off, but I've got mine here in front of me, all assembled and undercoated, ready to go.
Oh, you got further than I have, because I've built mine and sort of cemented it all together and filled all the holes in, but I haven't primed it yet.
Well, there is that great quote, isn't there? Is that you can either be first, you can be best, or you can cheat. So I figure I'm going to try and be first.
I would like to be best, but I'm probably going to cheat.
As Sid suggested, I might slip a couple of beers to our friend Rob and just see if he can paint it.
Just colourblind Rob.
Just colourblind Rob, who actually did paint for Games Workshop.
Yes, he did. Yeah, he's very, very good, actually, to be fair.
In fact, unfortunately, me and Sid, it really was Sid and my wife Amanda only came up with this idea after we'd seen this miniature, where we realised that Sid should have grabbed the miniature to paint and then got Rob to paint it on his behalf.
Quietly introduced it into the mix.
See, I know Rob's style because he follows me on my Instagram account, my painting account. So, and no, I would rumble that little ruse, you dirty cheat.
It'd be obvious because Rob's painting is just amazing.
It really is. Yes, it is way beyond any of us.
Ham-fisted pig tits for fingers over here, right? wouldn't manage. Even the Dulux opening the can would have created spatters around me, right?
Very true.
So, frankly, the fact you've disqualified, I should be upset about, right? But actually, it's for the best of everybody that I'm not allowed to be near these things, because it would be an insult to those miniatures, because they are very, very nice.
They are. They are really, really lovely, and very, very cheap as well.
I was surprised how cheap they were, actually, yeah. I nearly went back and bought a hell of a lot more miniatures from that stand. I do believe you did, Andy.
Yes, I did.
I did also. I did too, as well.
Oh, nice. I ended up getting a brewmaster dwarf, which we all joked at the time, that's Sid doing his shopping. So it's a dwarf sort of balanced on a barrel, sort of carrying a pint down the road. And I thought, do you know what? I'm very tempted to do that with a little bit of the appropriate skin colouring to match Mr. Gill. We shall see. But I also ended up buying a manticore, which I did for the wings because that'll be really fun to airbrush. He says, with faking confidence and ability there. Or at least it'd be very good to ruin it with an airbrush. But it is a lovely, lovely model. But yeah, even that was £20, and it's huge.
Yeah, I was saying some of those miniatures, if you went to Games Workshop, they'd be like triple that price.
Well, that's funny you should say that, because I ended up, on the third day I went there, I happened to be standing next to a chap with his son, and we were all oogling the miniatures again, and he said, you know what, I've seen one of these at Games Workshop, and it was £80.
Jesus.
Yes, compared to the 28, I think it was, at Blue Giant. So this was a massive actual giant carrying a tree. And yeah, it was £28, I think it was, at Blue Giant Miniatures, and yeah, comparatively at Games Workshop, £80 for something very similar.
I believe actually with Blue Giant Studios, one of the things you can actually just buy the files and print it at home with your 3D printer if you have one as well, which makes it actually even cheaper. Which I think is quite cool. Yeah.
But they're also done in resin, not plastic. So they're actually really sort of high quality. The detail's really fine. They're really lovely things. The one we've bought, though, I was talking to their owner, and this is like their first version of their moulding process. And building it was a complete twat.
Yeah,
that's fun to look forward to. I've got to admit, there was lots of miniature games and miniature stands there, and there was a point I was starting to suffer from miniature game fever, where like my brain was like, I'm going to leave this place with a new miniatures game, and I was looking at those miniatures there to paint. I was looking at is it Moonstone or Ark World? I can never remember the actual name of the game, which has some really beautiful but tiny miniatures.
Oh, Moonstone.
Yeah, Moonstone. Yeah. I was looking at the Elder Scrolls miniatures game. I was looking at the Fallout miniatures game, and every time I kept looking at these things, I'm going to get one of these, and then suddenly realised I haven't played a miniatures game in 5 years. let's not, hey. Let's try and wind this down. But it's easy to get excited when you see them all there. Now, several of us are UK Games Expo veterans. I think we were trying to work out. I think, Roy, did you reckon this was your 7th?
I know.
This was my 8th?
I think it was my 6th, I think we worked out.
I think it was and I think this is my 8th expo I've been to. But for one person, this expo was fresh-faced and new. Wasn't it, Sid?
There was cherry popping to be done at this expo, certainly. Wow. It is probably all I can start with, because it was what an experience. It was fantastic. It was, I don't know if it's just kind of, it was everything. It was the location, the number of people, the things to do, to try, to see. It was an assault on the senses in lots of brilliant ways. And it was just great to see kind of the community, all kind of in a large chunk of the community, retailers, distributors, people making things, the miniatures, the RPGs, the board games, everybody that we talk about in various ways in one place, having fun, people playing, bumping into people that, you guys knew, and new friends and people for me to speak to. It was awesome, frankly. I'm quite excited now. We're already making plans for Essen and Aircon, both of which are exciting me. No, it was a brilliant couple of days for me. I just wish I could have done a bit longer. But it is what it is. And life and stuff was in the way the rest of the weekend. I can't decide if I'm annoyed it was over Platinum Jubilee weekend or not, to be honest. Because I think if it hadn't been, I would have probably got another day there. But it is what it is.
No, next year, Sid. Next year. Are you going to go? Are you going to go into 2 days, or do you think you'll go and stretch it for 3?
Well, I'm thinking you made a really good suggestion, actually, Rory, which is have like the Thursday, Friday for doing all of the kind of stuff that we would do, and we did this time, the press preview and then a day of getting amongst the games. And then on the Sunday, if I can wrangle it right, take the wee lad along and then focus on maybe more of the family games or something like that. So I'm hoping I can get at least those kind of bookend it. Yeah. And then Saturday would be amazing. It's just trying to get a 3-day pass or 3.5-day pass out with a wife for something that would mean her not coming along is a bit difficult.
But it's only really a 2-day pass, Sid, because if you take the wee man along on the Sunday, you're giving her a pass.
Well, you see, you make a very good point there, sir. Now, for all our listeners, listen to Rory. Be like Rory. Rory makes a very good point there. Honestly, I think that's such a good point, actually. I think taking the kids along would be great, because there was so much to do for them from what I could see, and you can probably comment a bit more because you did take your kids along.
Yeah.
But just from what I saw, there was so much for them to do, so much for them to see. It was so well organised, and there's loads of kids there anyway doing their thing, having some fun with their parents and families and stuff. So
yeah,
absolutely.
I think Sunday's the really good day for that. It's normally a bit quieter. This year, Friday was absolutely manic. Saturday was a lot quieter, then Sunday was quieter still. But if you are thinking about taking the kids along, I would strongly recommend doing it. There is plenty for them to do. Even just wandering around looking at the cosplayers. There was a guy walking around in a full Space Marine suit of armour, which the kids were just in awe of. It had sound effects when he walked and everything. It was brilliant. Yeah, I definitely recommend it. And Sunday's a brilliant day to do it. It's not quite so busy.
Well, I think that will be going in the calendar for next year, mate. And that extends my ticket as well. So,
Should we talk about some games?
Why not?
Well, guess we should.
Since we went to a games expo, I mean, unless we want to talk about the food again. I mean, that
good talk about Korean fried chicken was good. Yeah, it was
pretty
Korean
good.
fried chicken.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not sell the man short on that.
So, I mean, Canoodle were there again. I mean, they were up at Aircon earlier in the year when I was there, alone, sampling all the food and potentially playing the odd game. But they got a thumbs up from everyone here with the Korean chicken. That went down extremely well.
Shirts. Went down everyone's t-shirt.
Went down our t-shirts very well.
Two people's t-shirts.
Yes, true.
Yes. Those of us who have learned to operate a knife and fork, Steve, we were perfectly fine.
I eat with gusto, okay, boys?
And your T-shirt, it would seem.
I would say actually that I did finish that and I did eat it perfectly, didn't make a mess, but then I suddenly realised there was me late for an appointment and basically ran from the Hilton lobby, which is where the food vans were, to Hall 2, and I had some chronic indigestion after that. So,
God, we really are of an age, isn't it? When we sat down, when we sat down to have our lunch that day as well, just for the viewers' indulgence here, right? We all sat down eating this crown for chicken, thoroughly enjoying it, and then 4 blokes made a hell of a lot of noise getting back up off the floor.
Yeah, that noise. Oh no, I'm broken. It's not good.
Right then, games. Who wants to go first? We're just going to do this random. Pick a game which you saw and it excited you, or you want to talk about, or you feel you have to talk about because you're obliged to. I don't care. Someone pick a game and tell me what it was like.
So, let's start with one that 3 of us played. Oh, let's start with Crescent Moon from Osprey Games.
Oh yes.
Oh,
Good choice. Good choice.
Andy, we did try holler you, but you didn't. I don't know where you were on Friday morning at 9:30, but we were sat down with Philip from Osprey Games as he taught us Crescent Moon, and it's bloody belting that game.
I was talking to Frank West at about 9:30 on Friday morning.
Oh right, so you were right round the corner
made
then.
it that far in. Yeah,
No, literally, it took me an hour and a half to get from the entrance of Hall 1. I got to Alicat, talked to Cesar and the folk there for a little bit. Then I got to Frank West, who was literally next door. Then I got to James, who was running the formerly Defection game, which was literally next door to that. It took me an hour and a half to get past 3 stands. So no, it was about 11 o'clock in the morning by the time I actually started looking around the rest of the hall. So unfortunately, I was schmoozing while you lot were playing games and being unprofessional.
Making use of the short amount of time that Steve and I had. Thank you very much.
So, Steve, do you want to give us a run through of Crescent Moon?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of an asymmetric game which has some commonality. So it's a Middle Eastern themed game where each person takes on a different role and you have slightly different rules and slightly different objectives, but you're influencing tiles and building things on them. So there's like a common kind of influence and troops and building pieces, but the way in which you put them down and the way in which you operate them is slightly different with each player. Mm-hmm. And it's not quite fully asymmetric like, say, Root is, where you're playing 4 different games. This feels more like you're all playing the same game, but have all got a different version of the rule book.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'd say that's accurate.
So it kind of balances a bit more between like an asymmetric power and an asymmetric rules. You're basically it's like an area control game, really. What you're trying to do is control and influence various aspects. So, for instance, I was trying to have buildings in as many spots as possible, and that would get me victory points. But I'd also get special victory points for owning mines and the holy site. I believe Rory, your character was like the warlord, and you get victory points for basically rampaging through and killing everyone. Sid's was the sultan, so basically he got lots and lots and lots of money, and I think you got victory points for having buildings in spaces with other players. Was it?
Basically, it was like a symbiote. No, not symbiote. An ecosystem kind of game, wasn't it? So everybody got a buff from each other or a threat from each other at the same time. And I think mine was if I had a town or something in next to one of your tiles, I would get a bonus and you would get a bonus from the fact that I was there. So there's an encouragement for you to have me, but also for me to actually go there. So
and then when you were doing trying to take over a space, you could try to take over a space via combat or via influence. There was like a little card play system where you could play a card which would affect it. There wasn't many cards in play. Like I think we played half a game and I had 2 cards basically. And then you could buy cards further in, and you could buy them from this open market, or you could buy them from Sid, because Sid was offering like deals, like backdoor deals on some of these cards, which of course just gave him more cash. Because he would often undercut the market and go, well, you can have that for 2 rather than 3. It's like, yeah, but that means I'm giving 2 more cash to Sid, which means he can buy more things to protect himself with. So really cool interplay.
It was really clever, because that last bit you just touched on was one of the things I really loved about it, is that mechanism that the Sultan had, which I think everybody had a kind of the unique skill, and that was just the Sultan's unique kind of skill. With that, we didn't really get to see it in the game we played just because of the time we had, but I reckon in a longer game that would have worked as really good leverage. So I could have like proper discussions with the other players and actually say, well, look, you want this card here. When it comes around to your turn again, I'll give that to you for free. But for you to have it for free, you're going to have to do this and protect me from the warlord, or put your troops there and give me give me some extra support in a tile or something like that. And I really wanted to see that mechanic play out, but I just think the time we had, we couldn't take it that far.
We did touch on it, but I say one of the things I really liked about this game was that symbiotic relationship between all the players. As I went into, just to give Andy a bit of an idea here, I went in to attack Steve, and I got my ass handed to me, which essentially knocked me out of the game. But then, as Philip pointed out, actually, if I'm out of the game, there's no one to oppose Steve's, because Steve had like the military, the good guy military, but without anybody to oppose him or distract him, Steve could just steamroll everybody else out. So it was in Philip and Sid's interest to try and buy me back into the game. So that's where Sid would be like, right, here's Rory, here's some free cards for you, and Philip would try and influence the board a little bit more to make it easier for me to slot back in, because they couldn't, without anyone there, because I was the only other military force on the table. Without me, Steve could have just, it would have been a whitewash, regardless of how much money Sid had, regardless of Philip's influence. There would be no one to stop him at all. And I thought that was really, really clever. And all of that dealing, all of that interaction happens like above the table. It happens with the players. There's no rules to say you have to do this. There's no rules to say how you make those bargains or deals with the Sultan. It's just you do it as people around the table. Great stuff.
Okay, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I gotta say as well, I mean, this, as you said in the past, Andy, don't get points for pretty, but I thought it was very well presented as well. Nice, vivid colours, so it was easily distinguishable whose pieces were whose. Nice, bright colours, nice, simple, and it sounds like almost like the antithesis of like a lot of modern games. You know, wooden pieces, simple, relatively low cost. I think you can get this for a relatively good price. I'd highly recommend giving this. I want to give this another try myself, and I'd highly recommend giving this a look because it seemed really interesting.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Yeah, okay. I'd love to play a full game of this. It really, you get into the expo. Right, this is the thing, right? I arrived at the expo. We're a bit late for traffic reasons, and then get a text off Rory. Play the Crescent Moon. 2 minutes. Come and join me. Me and Steve chasing through the halls, pushing folk out of the way. Park ourselves down, hearts pounding, and this game just drops. I'm sat there going, this is amazing. This is the kind of feeling I want to have when you come somewhere to play some games. I was so excited, and it really delivered, honestly. It was a brilliant way to start the expo, for me anyway.
To put an idea, Andy, on the level of rush we were in, we hadn't managed to get a coffee yet.
Whoa! That's...
Which is why we basically, once we finished that game, we came saw who'd managed to get like 2 yards into the expo and then hunted down a coffee.
Well
so
done.
That was Crescent Moon from Osprey Games.
And I believe that's available to buy now, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It was released on the 26th, 27th of May, so just before the expo. I think you can pick this up for around 50, 60 quid. Plays up to 5 players. I think you'd need really 3 at the very minimum to make this really work. Probably 4 is your ideal table count for this.
Yeah, anything with negotiation in, you're better off at higher player numbers, really. So people can throw their hat into the ring and go, no, I have a better offer, counter offer, no, I should do this. Yeah, it's good. Excellent. That sounds really good, and I didn't play it. God damn it.
That's all right. That just gives an excuse. That gives an excuse to play in the future again, properly.
It does indeed. Yes.
So, what did
I play? What did I play, Steve? That's a good question. I played quite a lot of games, actually. But one of the things I actually first played, coming back to my first foray into the hall, as soon as I turned up, was I went into Alley Cat Games, who were one of the sponsors, so they had one of the stands right next to the entrance, as is their wont. And they always had, as we said in our preview, they always have a good show, and this time was no exception. They've always got a really good stand there. It was busy right from the get-go. But fortunately, I managed to sit down pretty much straight away and get a demo of Autobahn, which has completed its Kickstarter not too long ago, but is taking pre-orders. And apparently on the pre-orders, you'll still get all the Kickstarter stuff. So if you like the sound of this, get stuck in. But Autobahn is very much along my line of thinking, because it is dry, boring Euro investing in the German motorway infrastructure. How's that for a theme? Steve's has fallen asleep. It isn't, of course, as boring as that. The idea is that there are roads to build, and you can build sort of motorways around Germany. But the idea is that you've got to take transport from various areas. So there's an element of it of, you know how in Ticket to Ride, where you've got a scoring card that says, if you build a train link from one station to something on the other side of the map, you get a certain number of points.
Yeah.
There's something like that. So basically, if you make a motorway link between one port and one city and another city, you'll get some points. But the idea is that you can also build service stations on these motorways. So if anyone takes a truck from one city to another city, which is a method of scoring points, if they go past your service station, you will get a coin, or you'll get some victory points or something like that. So there's loads of different ways to score, and you can upgrade motorways to make them double carriageway rather than single carriageway, and things like that, or lanes rather than carriageways. So all of you are kind of working together to upgrade the whole map, because without that, you won't be able to score many points. So you're going to be taking advantage of other people's stuff. But in building stuff, you yourself will get some points. So you've got to kind of sort of sneak your way around, not giving your opponents too many points, but taking advantage of what's on the board, obviously, to get you as many points as possible. And to be fair, it's very colourful. It's not sort of boring grey and sort of tarmac coloured. Each road is a very sort of bright, vivid colour, orange, yellow, purple, that sort of stuff. So it's very interesting. Really enjoyed it. It's nowhere near as dry as it sounds. I would say it's probably one of Ali Cat's heavier games. But it's not a heavy game. I would say it's probably sort of medium weight, maybe slightly heavier than, it's maybe 3.5 out of 5, give or take, on the scale. So it's easy to learn. It didn't take long for Chris to teach us. I think it was Chris. First time he'd ever taught a game at Ali Cat, so well done, Chris. You did a good job. I think it was Chris. Forget his name. And yeah, he taught us in about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes tops. We played a few rounds of it, and everyone walked away like, this is pretty good. So I walked away, and I've immediately backed it. I've pre-ordered it already, so I've put my money where my mouth is, and I really enjoyed it. Really great game from Ali Cat there, Autobahn.
Cool. I'll talk about a couple of games in one go here, because I had a little. I didn't play these games, but I had a bit of a talk through about Terracotta Army and Power Core, both from Board and Dice. So this is the aforementioned appointment where I had indigestion through most of it. So Terracotta Army is a Euro-style game. It is all about actually building Terracotta Army. And what this is on the board there is a grid, which you'll be putting miniatures on, these little square Terracotta Army soldiers, and you'll score points based on how they're positioned on the grid. So basically what you're doing is you're fighting over control of like rows and columns of this grid with soldiers and archers. And the way in which it's worked is quite intriguing, in there's like an action and selection disc system in the middle, which has several consecutive, that's not the word. Several concentric rings, and I think it was 3 actions on each ring. So the first thing you can do is rotate one ring in one direction, then choose a segment, and you take those 3 actions. Interestingly, actually, Ola from Board and Dice, when explaining this, said earlier versions had more turns, and it just turned into crippling analysis paralysis as everyone tried to work out what was the best combination of actions they could do based on this thing. But it was a really interesting little aspect. The other really cool thing was when you take your troops, they're actually from like a little tray in which the troops are positioned upside down. So there's going to be a printed piece of card on the bottom of the miniature, which will slot in. So you'll actually just like pick a token, and then when you pick the token, it's got the miniature attached to it. And where it is on the slot in this tray affects your actions as well.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's really. I'm going to go. It's quite hard to explain, but looking at it, it makes perfect sense. And there's a little tray with like a T-shaped thing, so the miniatures can slot in. Then there's all kinds of other Euro-style actions which advance it. Like you can build horses and chariots and archers and all kinds of things like that, which affect how you're going to score. It looked really, really interesting. Really like it looked not too heavy a Euro because it's all about like one aspect. So it's not going to be like a point salad kind of game because it's all going to be about how you do this area control of this, Terracotta army building. But it looked pretty cool in the process it got there. It was supposed to be out for Gen Con, but as with most things these days, it has been delayed. So we're not quite sure when this is going to come out. But we shall probably see a bit more of it in the future. The other game they showed off was Power Core Call of Cthulhu. Now, it's called Power Core because this is going to be like a new brand system, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So Power Core is the system, and there are going to be future games which use this system. And what this is a 2-player style combat card game, so influenced by your Magic the Gathering, that kind of game. Okay. It's called Power Core because each card that gets played has a Power Core, which is a little square token, which has 4 sides on it. And whenever you activate a card, you rotate that token 90 degrees. And that tells you what actions you can take with that card. And if the icons on that action match icons on the cards, you get like a double, an extra bonus. So, for instance, if it was an attack was a fist. If the action is a fist and your character has like a +2 fists, it means you do even more damage. And the way it worked was there was avatars, which are like basically the 2 characters which you're battling against, and then minions. The minions had power cores, which would have like a red cross on one of the sections. So when you got to that, the minion had been spent, it gets discarded, whereas your avatars of all 4 actions. It's been bugging me what the name of the game was, but there was a Warhammer game which used a similar process, and that's really what it reminded me of. Was it Warhammer Conquest? Or am I thinking of a different name?
I can't help you there, mate.
I know I played it with our friend Adam. It's a game which a whole card rotated, but on this one is the core rotates. Looked really interesting. The only thing I would say is some of the box art looked a little bit jarring to me because the Power Core logo is obviously the logo that's going to be for all the games, and they said there are going to be different themes for it. And the rest of the artwork was all licensed from Chaosium for Call of Cthulhu. So this bright, shiny blue Power Core logo, and then things with too many tentacles and eyeballs all around it, which was just a bit kind of like it's not the eyeballs and tentacles which is making me mad. It's the difference between the logo and the background that is. But it looked kind of interesting. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to play either, and I was just taken through both of them, and they'll be out sometime in the future.
Sweet.
Sid, do you want to take us through one of your plays?
Well, I can say what I played, and then one of you grown-ups can help me describe it with the right words and phrases and special things. Right? How about we call it a deal at that? No, right. I think the standout game for me was Akropolis at Hachette.
Yeah, boy.
Yes.
Now I'm going to skip to the end here, and I say I loved it so much. I went back at the end of the day, bought a copy, and then Steve and I played it on the Saturday after or the Sunday after.
It was a Sunday, yeah. And we played multiple games of it as well. It wasn't just one game. We played it several times.
So is that because you were hanging out your arse and you couldn't get it the first time?
No, because it's fucking good.
Okay. I just wanted to know that you might have been imbibing on the Saturday, that's all.
Oh yeah, we had a few.
Might have had a beer.
We had to have a after-action, hot debrief following the expo. But no, sorry, back to the game. Right, so I'll tell you what I think what it is, and you guys can correct as I go. Right. So for me, it was each of us had our own. So it's a Greek setting. I think it's Greek.
Yep.
Where we're trying to create a town, a village. We're all architects. Each of us is an architect, and each of us take turns to grow our town by selecting tiles from a pool, marketplace, I don't know, blueprints area. We all pick one of these tiles up, and they're all kind of 3 hexagons strapped together shapes, and each tile has got different kinds of city areas in it. So barracks, a marketplace, housing, a quarry, and there's one other which
there's
is
a temple, which is the purple. Yeah,
that was it. Thank you. And what you have to do is you have to pick a tile on your turn and attach it to your growing city. And how you attach it, or each of those kind of city areas scores in a different way. So some of them score if they're part of the same coloured group. So if you put housing next to housing, then that starts building up towards a scoring result. Other ones have to be on the edge of your city. Some of them need to be isolated from each other. So like marketplaces need to be separated so they're not touching to score. And there's kind of goes on like that. But the real clever thing I thought about this is that it doesn't just grow in two dimensions, like outways. It also grows upwards. So you can put these tiles that you pick up on top of other tiles within your city to score extra points for the levels that you can go up. And when I first saw this game, I thought, well, that's a piece of piss. You'll just build up, won't you? It's not that hard. Right?
Says the systems engineer.
Yeah, I've played this, I think, 4 times now, right? And I've never got it above too high.
Really?
Yeah, it's really, and you have to be, I think Steve described it as killing your darlings. You have to be willing to like just sacrifice this thing that was scoring loads for a while to then go up a level, because it's hard to kind of just grow up with the shape of the tiles and the rules that you have about placement of the tiles and that kind of stuff. So I love it. I just love seeing how this game works. It's beautiful.
It's a really good game, actually.
Yeah.
It's simple, and I had a little bit of a epiphany about this over the last, like, I would say maybe 2 or 3 years. Me and Andy, especially, have been chasing the heavy brain burner. We played lighter games, and we kind of go, "Oh, I don't want to play this lighter game. I want to play something that makes my brain melt, or something that's like a campaign that's going to take 200 hours because I've got this branching storyline." And this felt like going back in time, but in a really good way. This is one of those games that you play in half an hour, but I didn't feel as if I had a really it's really simple rules, but I didn't feel as if I had a light experience. I had an experience where I had to think about what I was doing each turn.
Oh, that's good.
And it felt really good playing this, like as if this is what board gaming should be.
Yeah.
Right.
Not chasing this $200 Kickstarter kind of thing, which we always end up doing because, there's nothing wrong with that. We do that because we get excited by it. It's okay to get excited, but this felt pure. I think that's what it is. It felt
think that's
pure.
Perfect, Steve. Yeah, it is a pure, simple game which really challenges you. That really gets you thinking about how, and even like the little bit of player interaction. I mean, when Sid and I played the 4-player game, this market comes down. Because I think to score your city areas, you need to have the stars. So I can have this temple on level 3 that's perfectly surrounded is going to be a big bollock score, but it's worthless if I don't have any purple stars. And you can read each of the cities and you can try and nab those stars or prevent them getting them or make them more expensive. It's really, really just a good fun game, and it looks beautiful. And for £25,
it's
you can't say
bargain.
no, really.
You know what, boys? I am really regretting not buying this now. But never mind.
Honestly, £25 for my impression of it, right, is I agree with you. I think those big games that you guys have had me playing and stuff are brilliant. They're great fun, right? But for what we needed on that Sunday morning, 25 minutes, we just played it twice and we loved it. And it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. I think it's the kind of game that if you've got a couple of pals around, you just want to kill a few minutes before you go out or you waiting for food to cook, store at the table, play 25 minutes. It's hard enough and interesting enough that you'll all have fun at it. And it's actually what I'm going to try and pull Sue into so I can play with somebody else a bit more often.
Well,
but and in fact, I might have somebody coming around tomorrow and I'm going to drop it on the table for tomorrow as well because it's just brilliant, honestly. Yeah. It deserves, it was winning awards and all sorts, this one, wasn't it?
It won the Public and the People's Award for the best family game at the Expo. Yeah. Fully
deserves it as well. Yeah.
Oh, well, there you go.
How does it scale for 2 players? Does it still play quite nicely at 2 players? I imagine your market is just smaller.
Well, we played with 3 because we had Amanda play as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it scaled pretty well because you effectively took out some tiles, so you had fewer tiles to work with.
Yeah.
I think the first game we played took about 25 minutes, maybe half an hour. But the second game we played, once we all knew what we were doing, we were burning through it in 10, 15 minutes.
Oh, really?
And it would have been quicker if we didn't have the boy being the banker of the rocks, and us having to have a negotiation for 10 minutes to get a rock out of him. But I just thought it was brilliant. I mean, interestingly, Rory, when we played it at Expo, we played it with some. I'm not sure whether they were intentional rules changes or not, but we played with the rubble, the currency, effectively went onto the tiles in the marketplace. But the rule book itself says not to do that, and if you have to pay to go up to buy a more expensive tile, that cost goes back into supply, and that massively changed my kind of play experience.
Yeah,
it made it so much harder and even more interesting because now you couldn't just kind of buy all the tiles you really wanted. You had to kind of be more the flop, as it were, mattered more.
Yeah.
And almost you were making those decisions as to which one to go for, dependent on what you could afford, and it almost encouraged you to build up because if you didn't build up, you never got rock.
Yeah.
So it was quite it felt like a really small change, but made a big difference to the game.
Have you looked at any of the variable rules? If you want something a bit heavier, it does have on the back of the rule book had some variant rules to make it more complex, didn't it?
We didn't really get into them, to be honest.
Cool.
But as you say, I think that will add more flavour and more variety into what otherwise is a fantastic game already. So,
Brilliant.
Awesome.
So that's Akropolis from Gigamac and Hachette Games. So it's Hachette in the UK, Gigamac everywhere else. Right, I'm going to talk to you about one of my darlings, which was Rise and Fall from Ludicali. This I only managed to get to play it myself. I think Andy and Laura swung by and saw me playing this. This is from the designer of Archipelago, Christoph Bollinger. And it does have some similarities. In this game, you are building this fantastic 3-dimensional hex world on these hex tiles. You literally, the game starts and you build the worlds. You throw down these sea tiles and then you put some field tiles on top, and then you go through jungles up to mountains up to snowy peaks, and then you put these little wonderful wooden UV printed meeple tokens down, units. And the game was it was just brilliant. One of the things I really liked about this was the action program. Yeah, the teach of it is really simple. You start the game with I think 4 different units: a boat, a villager, a city, and something else. And you've got these 4 cards, and the 4 cards. In your turn, you just play a card down and you're going to activate all the units of that type, and you've got up to 4 actions you can do, which is like mine some stone, chop some wood. If you've got some wood, you can send your little traveller into the water and he becomes a boat. Your boats can get some money. Your cities can create new units or they can upgrade units. It was really snappy. You play a card, that card's down now until I have to pick everything else up, and you just work through your units. Everybody's turn, and there were 3 of us playing, and we must have got through maybe a dozen turns in this game in about an hour, because it's really, really quick. You're drafting new cards as you create new units or upgrade units. You lose cards if you lose all your units of one type. There's no combat in it, so it's always about kind of how you manipulate your stockpile of stuff. So if a boat takes shore, your boat then becomes a city. So that was my only boat, so I lose my boat card. Really, really good. Really, really good. Really impressed with this. Interestingly, this is after chatting to the designer, will have an unlimited amount of players at one table in theory. Yeah.
Whoa.
So you can play it 1 player, you can play it 2, 3 or 4 or so on. You can play it competitively, cooperatively. But if you bought enough expansions, the expansion pack will contain enough tiles to increase your map and the stuff you need for your army. So you could play. The plan is to have up to 8 factions, all of which are going to be asymmetric as well, just to add more flavour to the mix. But if you went beyond that, you just have double. 2 players would have the same powers, but you could be sat at a table, a huge table, playing a 10 or even 20 player game, and your turns are quite zippy. So it would slow down, obviously, but you could do it. And I just think that'd be an interesting experiment.
I want to try this because it looked so cool from the photographs you posted to us. Sometimes things look cool, but hopefully it sounds like they've got the gameplay to match it, though.
I think it really does. I mean, it's an established designer. It was, Archipelago, or however you want to pronounce that word, is a great game, and it has a similar feel and vibe to it. There's no tracks or scoring in it like this. You score for the amount of units you have on the map at the end of the game. And you're trying to crack these essentially victory badges. So once I've got all of my merchants on the table, if I'm the first player to do that, I grab the merchant badge, which is worth 25 victory points at the end of the game. Once 4 of those badges have gone, that's the end of the game. But that does take a little while to get to. But yeah, I'm so excited for this. It's going to be hitting Kickstarter in September this year. We were lucky enough to be given a review copy from Ludicali. So if you're up for it, boys, we can play this next time we catch up.
Yes.
Yes, we should do that.
Yes.
Tick.
Done.
Right then, Andy, since you were there 3 days as well, what else have you got to tell us about that me and Sid might have missed?
If I know for a fact you missed, is a game that I've had my eye on for about a year. So basically, last time I was at the Expo last year, is the game Bretwalda from Phalanx Games. So it was on a kind of display last year, but they weren't demoing it because it wasn't ready. It was literally, we've got a board and we've got a box, and that's about as far as they got last year. So now they have a game. And Bretwalda is a territory control game, is probably the best way to describe it, where you are one of, I think it's 4 or 5 of the 7 kingdoms that were in sort of post-Roman Britain. So this is about sort of 900 or so AD, so a long time ago, where essentially you've got sort of the Norfolk King, you've got Wessex, you've got Wales, the Midlands, that sort of South Midlands, is it all that sort of areas where there's a lot of infighting and all the sort of kings were trying to rule the whole country by sort of dominating all of the other kings. And the idea is the game is, the board is broken up into, let's say, counties. For ease of description, and some of those counties are rural, some of those counties are urban, or at least what counted for urban back then. A couple of sheds and a pub, and a dog, and some of the areas, they could be one or the other, have these little symbols in. It looks like a bit like a medallion, and the idea is that you score points if you control an area with one of these sort of medallions in, basically. And ultimately, you need to score, I think it's 12. So basically, you control a number of these things, and you get up to 12 points, you win the game. But it varies with player count. But anyway, the point is, you control these areas, and you have a number of units, and they vary in power, from basically what amounts to a farmer with a stick, all the way up to your king. And your king has sort of specific powers, and the idea is that you can move these people around, and if you go into another territory, the standard combat occurs. You roll a few dice and you work out who wins. But on top of that, there are a few cards you can play that gives you an ability in those combats, but you also have a limit of 2 actions per round, and you have a choice of 4 actions. But you can upgrade your actions as you go through the game for the cost of an action and some cash. So you can either recruit people, basically collect taxes, you can move your people around, or you can do some building and upgrading, and that's it. It's really straightforward sort of idea. But the zenith of the game for me was literally right at the end of the demo. And the game is based, I think it's over 3 years, and you play 4 seasons in each year, so essentially 12 rounds. And the zenith was, at the end of this demo, everyone has a kind of a couple of asymmetric, I think they're called annal cards. So basically, you complete a secret mission card, then you are written into the annals of history, and you gain a point for it. So you kind of keep it, and it's another way to score points. And one of these things for me was basically win 3 battles through a single movement action. So when you move, you can move any number of your troops around. So if any number of these troops enter another area with somebody in it, a fight will kick off. So, have 3 fights, win 3 fights, get a point. So I did this, won 2 of the fights, charged into the final area with, right, I'm going to take down not only an enemy king, but I'm going to win my 3rd fight. In we go, roll some dice, and not only did I lose that battle, but in the subsequent player turns, my entire kingdom collapsed within a single round.
Nice.
But it was really good fun, really enjoyed it. I am really looking forward to the crowdfunder, which is going to be starting on, I think it's the 15th of June. So in 5 days, 5 days from now, as we record this podcast.
So probably last week.
Yeah. It's on GameFound. It's by Phalanx Games. It's called Bretwalda. I don't know how much it's going to be, but I would guess probably of the order of about £60 based on what it looks like at the moment. But I will certainly be backing it because I really enjoyed it, and it's a very clever game. Also, just coming back to is it Crescent Moon you were talking about, where you can negotiate around the table. The same is true here. You can perform any kind of negotiation here. You can pay people to invade somebody else. You can pay people not to invade you. There's actually a voting system where the Vikings basically invade at the end of certain rounds, and there's a betting or a bidding system where you can essentially choose what happens to them. So you can basically choose to invade one of your enemies, or you can choose to move them somewhere else. And as part of that, you can pay someone else some money to put into a kitty so that their bid is increased, so they choose to ruin the day of somebody else as well. So basically you can all gang up on one person, for example. There's basically no limits, and nothing is binding either, so you can be a complete and utter shit. It's brilliant. But I really, really enjoyed it, and for all of those reasons. So James at Phalanx did a really, really great job of explaining it. We all had a really great time. There was a 4-player game going on. It took us about an hour to do a third of the game with the teach. So it's not a short game, but it's not a long game either. We reckon about the first game you play is about 3 hours, but once you're used to it, it'd be probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours. So it's a medium to heavyweight game from that sort of point of view. They're not difficult rules though. So as I say, once you get used to the game, I reckon you could probably get through in about an hour and a half with 4 players. So yeah, that was Bretwalda by Phalanx Games, which I thoroughly enjoyed.
Just while we're on Phalanx Games, I want to say a thank you to the guys at Phalanx Games, because they heard our last podcast and me talking about my metal coins for Nancy Narkin that I really wanted, and they bought a bag along for me. So thank you very much, guys.
Oh, that was really cool of them.
That was really good of them.
There you go.
I mean, I didn't look to see whether they were selling them generally, but I'm going to treat myself as being a special case in this one.
Try not to make a joke about Roy being a special case.
Bite your tongue. Let's not go for the obvious joke. James, who was teaching Bretwalda, actually does listen to our podcast, which is very cool. So I don't know if he's listened to everything, but he certainly admitted to listening to us. Felt dirty with that admission. Yeah. I'm admitting to this now. It's like admitting a crack habit, isn't it?
I don't know. I think that's more socially acceptable.
You're probably right.
You can get help for that. Did
you listen to Polyhedron Collider? Oh, that's it. It's game over, isn't it? Nothing we can do for you.
So these listeners who are going to get these T-shirts off us, are they just going to become like pariahs at later conventions? Don't play with them. They listen to PHC.
They've got bad habits.
One of the games. I mean, I don't know if you wanted to talk about this, Sid, because we've actually. I think you really liked this, and we played.
No,
this
you were in, mate.
Sunday.
You go for it.
So we both played Pocket Detective from Lucky Duck Games.
Oh, we saw. Yeah, we all had a talk.
We all did.
Yeah, it looked interested.
Well, then me and Sid played it on Sunday.
Right. Oh.
So we can go into a bit more detail. Yeah, we've done 1/3 of the game already. So Pocket Detective is a detective mystery game. It is a classic detective, so you are a police detective looking at a murder in the first one, and you will have a series of clues. You follow down the clues, and your job, of course, is to find the right guy and collar them. There's a scoring system, and the way the scoring system works is a lot of the investigative options you take cost time. So there's a little time clock, and you have basically 100 points at the end, and you lose 1 point for every clock you've used. And it is not possible to do the whole thing in like 0 clocks. You have to spend clocks to do it. You also got, I can't remember the name of the mechanic now. It's like antagonism or something like that.
Was it not like tension or something like that?
Tension, that's the one, Sid, you're right. And this was like an unsmiling, unhappy emoji on the card, and that was like worth minus 10 points if you did that. And that was really clever. Like, for instance, I don't want to spoil this because it is like a play once and you've solved it kind of game. But one example says you could arrest someone, and if you arrested them and they were guilty, at the end it was fine. But if you arrested them and it ends up they were innocent, then you would have got this tension minus 10 points because you've arrested the wrong person, which was really quite clever. So it warned you. It basically said, if you arrest this person and they're innocent, you'll be in trouble. It's like being sort of like, nah, let's bring him in. Let's stick him in the.
Have him. We're having him.
Yeah. But really straightforward. It's just a deck of cards, and you reveal cards which give you clues and give you avenues of investigation, and you have to piece together the murder or the or whatever investigation you're looking at. The starter set, which is what we bought, comes with 3 investigations in it. I said we've done one of them, and I believe they're going to be selling individual investigations as one-off boxes as well. That's what we were shown at Expo. One of the great things about this, we will talk about this in a future episode, because once I've finished all these, I can see this box set going around the houses and we'll all have a go of it. I know Laura has already basically said, we're having that as soon as you finish with it. She saw some of the demo and was quite impressed with it as well.
Yes.
Well, as I remember from our conversation with Bree from Lucky Duck, there's nothing that connects the 3 decks in the box, is there?
No, I believe they are completely all standalone.
So you can almost just go, right, here's deck 1, Andy and Alora, you go off and play that, and then...
Yeah. And there's no rules either. There's no rule book in it, because it is just quite literally follow the story that's in the deck of cards. So you don't have to worry about a rules overhead. I don't know yet if it suffers from the similar issue that I had with both Time Stories and Unlock, where there might be a clue in the box.
Oh.
But we'll find that out. Yeah, I fell a cropper with that with Time Stories. There was a Time Stories one which I decided to save moving space to game night and just took the deck of cards out of the box and took it with me to game night. Get to game night, and one of the clues is like lift up the bottom panel at the bottom of the box.
Oh, what?
So yeah, Pocket Detective from Lucky Duck Games. I don't know if you got any thoughts, Sid.
No, I mean, from my point of view, I think it was a lovely little game. When we were stood in at the expo, just having that talk through of it, and we went, we're going to stop now. We've got to stop now because we're going to play a third of the game, right?
Yeah.
And that was the best decision we made at the expo. But then coming home and actually playing it, it was really great fun. And the way, we were antagonizing over like decisions. Should we go this way or should we do that? Or, does this feel like a dead end lead? Should we cut our losses on that one and go a different way? And the cards were really nice. The artwork was really nice. It was so simple. It was just another nice little game that was you can put on the table in front of anybody. You don't have to be a gamer. I don't think you don't have to. As long as you can understand and read, you're golden with this game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that there's something to be said for that, because I say my Sue, my wife, doesn't really get too excited about gaming, but I think things like this will start getting her involved, and then help
Who knows?
In the longer term, as it were.
Quick questions then, guys.
Very welcome.
How many of you played this when you played it on the Sunday?
It was just me and Sid.
And how long did it take you to finish off that deck, that story?
45 minutes?
I was about to say 45 minutes, actually, yeah.
Okay, that's good. That'd probably
Which
go...
I think it's a good number.
Yeah. I mean, that would probably go up if you had more debate, and more debate would come with more players, but yeah.
Yeah, but there's the only mechanic to the game really that would help stop that is there was an active player. So the active player would make a decision on which investigation lead they're following, and as soon as that lead was followed, it goes to the next player.
Right.
So between the two of us, it doesn't make much odds, and I would thought with most groups, it's not going to make much odds. You're going to come to a decision between you. But if you did have that whole thing of debate, then there's one person who chooses what that lead is going to be each round, and that moves, which is quite, should keep it flowing and stop it, completely stopping. I would also say as well, the mystery worked really well. We've played games like this before, like other detective games, where the mystery either has a leap of logic somewhere, or there was that one that I really hated, and I think you really loved, Rory, which was about like time traveling and an old woman and a cat. I can't remember the details.
I can't remember it from that description either, to be honest.
I just remember there was a cat and there was a cigar and there was a glass of wine. I can't remember anything else about it. But that one I really didn't like because it didn't feel like you resolved anything at the end of it. Oh. And I've had issues with Portal's Detective, the very first one, because I thought that made a leap of logic which wouldn't stand up in court, which really annoyed me. But this felt like it was quite logical. All the steps you took, once you got the information, it was a logical lead to these other points. So I don't know whether that means it was easy, but it made you feel really clever working it out.
which is you want from a detective game, yeah.
Yeah, you want to make you think you're smart, even when possibly you're being led by the nose.
Yeah, it's like when you read a detective novel, you want to try and figure it out before the reveal, don't you?
Yeah,
it's like
exactly that. Yeah,
that's cool.
That's Pocket Detective from Lucky Duck Games, and me and Sid really enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Nice one. Whilst we're on the subject of similar things, I had a poke at Detective Stories, which is one of the stands there. So I managed
Detective
to get
Society.
That's the one. Detective Society. Sorry, yes. Thank you.
You're welcome.
There's too many games called Detective at the moment. It's confusing.
So yeah, I went to see the Detective Society, and this is a significantly bigger affair than Pocket Detective. So the idea is
Rucksack Detective.
Pretty much, yeah. You know what? You ain't far wrong. I think there's about 4 or 5 of these sort of series that they've dubbed it. And the idea is it's very similar sort of thing to the Time Stories and Pocket Detective, that sort of thing. So basically, something has happened, a mystery is to be solved, and you, the players, need to solve it. Now, the Detective Society stuff is a lot more involved. So it makes use of the internet, of text messaging, of phones, of Google, of all of there's some very nicely made artifacts in each box, so letters from sort of, fake companies, and it's all sort of nicely sort of branded with artwork and things like that. And each box is a sort of single episode, and most of the series that they do, I think there's about 4 or 5 series. This series contains 6 episodes. Each episode lasts apparently about somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours per episode. Each series is probably somewhere up to about 12 hours long. So there's quite a lot of gameplay in there for, the price. An individual episode is about £25. The full series is about £130. Yeah, so it's a lot of money, but you do get a lot of entertainment out of it. So for 4 folk, it could be considered quite good, and obviously you don't need to do it all in one sitting. There are only one-shots, though, so once the game's been played, whilst it's not destructive, and if you're careful with, you don't tear envelopes or anything open, then you could obviously pass it on to somebody else or sell it on, but it is a one-shot. But they were very good, they were very well put together and very well made. There are a number of different ones. There's a murder, there's a conspiracy, there's a mystery, and various other sort of different themes. So for anyone who's into sort of thrillers and mysteries and things like that, there is something there from the Detective Society that will float your boat in terms of theme and mystery type. But this is very much at the more expensive, deluxe, heavyweight, lots going on kind of end of the sort of detective mystery type games. But it was fun. I did enjoy it.
That sounds cool. I really wanted to look at that, but kind of ran out of time. And my impression from what I briefly looked at it, it looked like, you go... I mean, I know Sid's been to one of these, but you have like the murder parties.
Yeah.
And they always end up being a bit rubbish.
Yes.
This looked like a proper murder party, as in big chunky pieces of evidence, not like little cards, like you would get in Pocket Detective where you huddle around a table. This looked like something you could actually get meaty into in a good evening with some friends.
Very much so, yes. That's exactly what it is, Steve. I mean, as I say, the letters. I mean, I did put together a sort of 15-minute sort of mini mystery as a demo for the expo, which I sat through. Apparently, it took me about 7 minutes, and she was very impressed with how fast I went. But I'm pretty sure everybody must have done it about that much. But the idea was there was a picture with a frame in it, and there were 3 photographs. There was a letter, in fact, a couple of letters, one from a barrister, one from a sort of fake company. So you actually had to go through all of this, and it genuinely did look like proper literature. So it was nicely put together. So yeah, it was very much that sort of well put together. It wasn't shoddy. Looked the part. I'm actually taking part in a proper mystery here, rather and piecing together bits of evidence rather than something that someone's thrown together in 20 minutes and called it a mystery. So yeah, very very much the higher end of quality though.
Yeah, it gives you that immersion into. I mean, it's not like a role play game as such, but you in some ways you are role playing as a detective, and you're doing it as a group. No one's doing silly voices or anything like that. But it does put it. Yeah, it sounds very much like it's going to put you in mind of those dinner party murders that you do yourself.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. Yes. So I did enjoy it. I probably will get one at some point. I am quite interested in the idea, but of course it's one of those things that I need to go, well, do I want to spend £125 on one shot thing?
With that, Andy, a quick question there, mate, is so that you say it's 125 quid, and that gives you, what, 12 episodes, was it?
6 episodes.
Six episodes. Are the episodes connected, or is it...
Sort of.
Okay.
I did ask this. They're not... You don't need episode 1 to solve episode 6, for example.
Yeah.
They're all individual episodes, and they're all kind of standalone, but there is apparently a kind of a running theme between
like a
the
narrative,
series. Yeah. So you don't need all 6 episodes for the series to be completed, but it's obviously nicer from a sort of story point of view that you do.
Yeah, okay. Cool, thank you.
So yeah, that was the Detective Society. I can't remember the publisher, but Google them, you'll find them. And it was really good fun. They had a very busy stand for the entire time, actually. So they had a lot of interest. And I think the actual prices I've just quoted for Expo, so I know they did a discount, so they're probably more expensive than what I've just quoted you. So don't be surprised if they're closer to 150 quid.
So one game me and Andy played, and this was on Kickstarter, but I believe they've actually cancelled the Kickstarter now, was the Amulet of Thrayax.
The Amulet of Anthrax, which is what I call it.
Yeah. So we had a quick game of this, and this was like Frank from Isle of Cats fame pointed us towards this and said it's worth a look. This was a bizarre little game in which you are to a circular board which represents the city, and you were all weird cults where you were sacrificing members of the population, and your score was basically based on a point for every commoner and 10 points for every noble that you'd managed to murder. And the whole game was basically about manipulating the board to do these things. You had two decks of cards each. And apparently, from my understanding, is everyone's decks were slightly different. And they allowed you to basically maneuver pieces around the board and murder people. And so the aim of the game was to try and maneuver so you get the best result, most murders possible in your area. There was a couple of things that mixed this all up. So I said the circular board with things in sections. You could only influence areas depending on the card play, so some cards could only work on the area you were in, some on like other areas. There was you had tokens that you moved around which represented you, your cult leader, and you also had this amulet. And the amulet, basically, if you in the zone which the amulet was pointing at, you could use the super duper power on the card as well as the standard powers. Also, every single section of the board was split into like an open and a locked section, which allowed you to do like further manipulation. So you couldn't, when you murdered people, it actually said like which section of the board, the sector you're in, you could murder from. It was more difficult to murder from the protected as it was from the unprotected side. It was very interesting artwork. It was like I've never seen, quite rare, very unique in the way it was drawn, and all the crazy cults. Like I think one of the cults was like a bunch of cats in a trench coat, and other ones was that the one which had the symbiotic relationship blobs on people's heads?
Oh,
as
that's
well?
right. Yeah. They basically
yeah.
dissolved people from the inside out. Yeah.
Yeah. So very cartoony and very silly. Let's be fair, it was a very silly game the way it was done. I quite liked it. I was umming and ahhing, and I basically said when I left the stand with Andy, whether I back it's going to depend on the price, because I liked it, but I wasn't quite sure if I liked it enough to spend a lot of money on it.
Yeah.
And so I was on the edge, and when I found out it was £40, I was kind of like, I don't know if it's worth the £40. How much play I'll get out of it. If it had been less, I probably would have jumped straight in. About that, to be fair, it's probably about the right level for it. But as I said, the Kickstarter's stopped, and they're about to relaunch and re-go forward. I mean, having a Kickstarter that started before Expo is always I always think a ballsy move.
Yeah.
You do the Kickstarter after Expo.
Yes, get the feedback. You go straight in, and people turn around and go, "This is shit," and watch your project collapse. Yeah. You're right.
I get the impression, Andy, you weren't very enamoured by it, though.
You are correct, sir.
Yeah.
What gave it away? Was it
I
didn't like that when we walked off. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that wasn't for me. No, I did not. I didn't. I'm not going to say I didn't get it, because that's not true. I didn't really enjoy it. I didn't see the point of it. I didn't really see what I was doing in the game that really had any point, because I felt a lot of the game was well beyond my control.
It was a very chaotic game, and because you were drawing from a deck of cards to take your actions,
Yes,
I felt that you were limited in what you could do. Although you had 3 of each card, so you did have choices. There was a point when I basically had 2 of the same card.
I had the same
I was
problem.
like, well, that's not a card I want to use. The other one I found, and I don't know if this was just specific to this game, the amulet is supposed to rotate, but certain cards can lock it in position. So, and the amulet locked like straight away and didn't unlock the entire game. So it was like, well, that's a very weird mechanic to have. It doesn't affect us at all. So all these super duper powers I can't use because I'm on the other side of the board. So yeah, and I don't disagree with you, Andy. I don't think it's a bad game. I just think it's a style of game which you either have to embrace the chaos or you're not going to enjoy it.
I don't disagree. I didn't hate it. I don't think it was a bad game. It's just not for me. I didn't. I mean, I struggled with the cards in my hand. And basically, my cards were crap, and they didn't allow me to do very much at all, which I guess is part of the game, but that's not the sort of game I enjoy. So I could kind of see where the game was trying to do, but again, I think the amulet mechanic needs work, because we remember talking to the chap that was demoing it. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he was selling us like one of the earlier iterations of it meant that the amulet was almost ineffective. You could lock it in place and people couldn't unlock it, and basically people would just avoid it, and it became almost useless. So I said, well, what's the point of having it then? If that's the point. So thankfully they have obviously made some changes there. And apparently we were playing a version of the game that wasn't the most recent, which I did raise an eyebrow and thinking, well, hang on a minute, why aren't you demoing the best version of this game to get the most people interested? But hey, it's not my decision. But yeah, it was okay. It was fairly straightforward, I think, in terms of mechanics. And demo. I thought the artwork was a little confusing, actually. I know you said it was quite different, but I found it quite confusing.
I knew you were having some issues with colour blindness on some aspects of it, weren't you?
Yeah. Some of the iconography was a bit odd. They have said they've improved some of the icons on it. They made them a bit bigger so you can actually see what's going on, which will help. But I still found just the general layout, the general style of the game was very confusing to me. Essentially, the whole thing's a big circle. It's divided into, I think it's either 6 or 8 segments of a city, a big round town with this amulet in the middle, and it spins around. It's straightforward in principle, but seeing the demarcation of these various zones, I found was a little bit weird and a little bit unobvious. So, and the designer was, or the demoer, I don't know, I think it's the designer. So, this clearly goes into this bit now. Does it really? Why? Okay, fine, if you say so. So, again, I was a little, disappointed, not enamoured.
That's fair enough.
Well, on that theme, can I talk about Starship Captains?
You can, yes, you can, because there's lots of people, including myself, who want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yes.
So I was excited to play Starship Captains because I'm a bit of a Trekkie and it looked quite cool. But I came away and I wasn't thrilled. Wasn't thrilled with my experience.
Really?
Oh dear.
Yeah, I think part of that was as you gents will know, because we've played board games together, I like a bit of social interaction at the table. I like there to be swearing and name calling, and I like dick moves, even with games that don't really facilitate dick moves. I like to do as much as I can to frustrate other players and they me. There was at the table I played at, there was no interaction at all with my opponents, so it did really give me a little bit of a. It was like a wet fart, really. I had to keep asking, is it my turn now? Because I'm not entirely sure what you've just done, because you've just been talking to each other and kind of not me, or whispering to each other. But that being said, it wasn't the greatest gaming experience because of that. Coming to the game, though, it is essentially a pick up and deliver with this interesting. It's more like a deck builder, but with workers instead of cards. So you're
a worker builder?
A worker builder, really. So you've got
Deck placement.
Deck placement.
And it was really cool. You start the game with these with 4 crew members that are in this central little pod, and they had wooden pieces that had been laser cut, and I don't know what they're going to be like in the final version, because this was, of course, all prototype. And as you use them, you slot them into this sliding track at the back, and at the end of the next turn, they push forward, and you get 4 new members of crew. So you're going to have to, you're kind of trying to work out how you're going to cycle your crew, how you're going to use them, and in what order, so that they can come out again sooner in the next turn. And you had like the 3 kind of Starfleet colours: blue, red, and yellow. Blue was your science, red was your command, and yellow was your security. And then you use these workers essentially to activate certain areas of your ship, or to go on away missions. And the away missions are kind of where it's like a pick up and deliver. You fly to this planet, and there's a card there, and it says I need to send 1 red and 1 blue to go and do this away mission, and then I'll get these victory points and I'll get these bonuses. Or I can send an android if I happen to have picked them up, pick one of those up, and you do that, and then you go off, and then that's really, to be honest, that's it. That's the game. It's you fly around, do this pick and deliver. You send your science officers off if you want to try and get some upgrades for your ship, which are these cards, and then you put those into this separate little player board, and you're trying to line up the icons on them. When you get 2 repair icons that are touching each other on the left and right hand side of the adjacent cards, I get to do a repair on my ship, or I get to do a free movement, or I get a free what they call it, like essentially an upgrade badge. You can upgrade your crew, so you can turn your grey cadets into a coloured member of crew, so that you can have an extra security. There's other cards that allow you to swap your crew, so you can turn a science officer into a command officer. Use your commands to fly around, use your science officers to get your upgrades, and you use your security officers to shoot pirates. And this was another point of the game which I felt was a little bit flat, was these pirate ships or alien spaceships, they just kind of sat there in space and were just kind of like a speed bump. You couldn't fly through them, so you had to destroy them or go around them. But when your movement is 2 for every red member of crew, most places you could usually get to, or you could just change your plan slightly and take a slightly longer route. Combat was really simple. There was no dice. It's just you immediately destroy the pirate ship. It immediately does 1 damage to you. You lose points at the end for damage that you've still got on your ship, and you get an upgrade. And I felt like when you think Star Trek, and you think of kind of the space battles, I think of drama and a dynamic fight with shields going down and shields going up and deflectors and tractor beams and torpedoes and phasers. In this, it was just, oh no, I've used my yellow crew member and I've attacked it and destroyed
inverse ionic pulses
and it doesn't move.
Oh right. Oh.
Yeah, and it didn't move. I think it would. I feel it would be it would be more exciting if they at least moved, and they can force you into combat rather than just being there as a speed bump. Or if you could do something with the weapons or shields, you could at least not take the damage. And there was this other thing in the game which really felt like a whole separate thing. You know, a lot of games have tracks on the side of the board, and this had a track, and you had a pirate track, an android track, and it's not the Federation because they can't use the word Federation, but I can say it because I didn't design the game. A Federation track, and every time you score certain points, you go up these tracks. But you're all meant, and I felt, okay, that's cool. You get victory points, you get upgrades as you go up the tracks, as these things normally work out. But for me, I was like, well, if I'm a Federation Starship captain, I don't want to go up the pirate track. Surely going up the pirate track is a bad thing. That will turn me into a pirate, so I'll be a rebel, so then I won't be able to go up the Federation track, or there'll be, if I go to a base or doing missions become more difficult, or I get less rewards, and vice versa. If I'm high up on the Federation track, maybe that unlocks extra bonuses when I go on these missions because I'm such a prestigious captain now. But there was none of that. There was no synergy between these tracks and what was going on the board. You could just go up them willy-nilly and unlock things and get things and more victory points. And it didn't seem to have any impact on the game itself, which thematically didn't make sense to me either. But yeah, that was Starship Captains. It is a game. It functions. It's got this really nice crew mechanic thing. Is really interesting, and it's nice, and I'd like to see that again, but I would not want to necessarily play this game unless there have been some changes to it.
Wow! And this is out now, isn't it? This is like is it not? Okay,
no, it's CGE, so it's be S.
Okay,
they always do their releases at S.
Fair, but you can't imagine there's going to be many, if any, changes between now and then, though.
But Peter, I caught up with him briefly on the Saturday, just walking around the halls, and I shared some of these thoughts with him then, and he was like, no, really happy for the feedback. It's still playtesting, it's still development. There are some other things they're working
That's
on. Hopefully they get some other feedback, or they take some of this on board and they can make those tweaks. Personally, it's probably at the moment it's a bit light for me, and without enough agency or enough control or excitement to really make it worth a purchase for myself.
Okay. Wow. The fact that you're saying it's a bit light for you does kind of raise an eyebrow. Well, I don't mean that in a bad way, because I know you're a lot more tolerant of lighter games, because obviously you play a lot at lunchtime, so it's kind of your sort of bread and butter. But I'm just surprised to hear that coming from you.
Yeah, it just really wasn't. It didn't really feel like there was enough of a kind of an engine to build. It had lots of these cool parts, but they just weren't chunky enough. They were cool. They were interesting, but they weren't chunky enough in and of themselves, and there didn't seem to be much relation between the light chunky parts to make it overall. Okay,
so they just chucked a load of gaming mechanics at a wall and see what stuck.
And what sticks is a game, and it's I mean,
is this more of your objective game review now? This is a game. That's as far as we can go.
It's some of the artwork is brilliant. I think they've got some great ideas for how the models, the workers are going to work or look. It needs a bit more for me to really get excited about this game now.
Okay, fair enough.
Cool. Right then, folks, we have got a lot to talk about, and rather than spend 3 hours chewing your ear off, I think we've made the decision to break this down into multiple podcasts.
How considerate we are.
We are inconsiderate. The question is, do I call it 114A and B, or just 114 and 115?
4 and 5.
Anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Thank you very much for listening. We'll be
5
back
minutes
very
before
soon.
the next podcast.
Well, yeah, exactly. We will say the intro. Thank you very much for listening. We've been Polyhedron Collider. Just put that into Google. We'll be back in very soon, short time, with part 2, where we talk about even more games from the Expo, because there were that many. It's ridiculous. I mean, this was an easy podcast to do. It was just me and Andy, because me and Andy played all the games. There's now twice as many of us. There's twice as many games to talk about.
More wrangling.
Yeah. So, until next time, tatty bye and happy gaming.
Ta-ra.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.